BRAC in Bangladesh is this very large entity. They do everything from, BRAC Bank to, BRAC schools, BRAC healthcare. In India, we're very small, and our leverage is working with others. So working with government, working with other NGO partners to scale programs. So a lot of this, translating insight to action is something that we have to actively engage in. But I was just sort of thinking about, okay, what are the top three development policy ideas in India in the last 20 years that have actually hit scale? So more than 6-7 states, more than, I don't know, at least 1/4 of the population. And maybe, I'll get more ideas in the room, but what I thought about was, the Narega scheme was one. The National Rural Livelihood Mission is another successful one. Maybe the whole digitization, Aadhaar was, another one. So what were the starting points of these policy ideas? Was it research or was it practice? Or how did they actually get from, one SHG by Marada in Karnataka to now, hundreds of thousands of millions? And I think the answer there is quite complicated. It's not just, oh, we did brilliant evaluations, the World Bank did brilliant evaluations. I think a lot of what Jonathan was saying, champions that stayed in their positions for a long time, that could influence more fiscal resources, that really supported, the scaling of these things. And I think there was value that was seen by the political layer. So oftentimes there's the incentives of the political layer and the bureaucratic layer are actually not in sync. They're different incentives. And so the magic happens when these two kind of come together somehow. And that's what we are also trying to, get at.
Great. Last but not least, Bob, we'd love to hear from you.
No, I have to stop relaxing. So, let me just say some comments based on what people have said before. One of some of the things that Som said about Michael said about people. There is to actually have this bridge between research and policy be super effective. In the end, you have to be operating. All of us probably know how to operate at a high level, but what you really need to be operating on is where the work actually happens. And this comes in two avatars in India, I think. One is actually individuals, right? So there are obviously, it helps for there to be a top-down blessing. But what you need is to actually have institutional presence that's consistent, that's working with people on the ground. Someone spoke earlier about a data effort with Niti Aayog. And here's the second aspect of being ground level. That is, in India, things happen very often at the state level that are really very powerful. Niti Aayog, it's wonderful, of course. But we've, I think, and I'm wearing two hats here, but one is the EPIC hat and one is the Ahmedabad University hat that I'll speak about in a second. But in EPIC, by way of example, some of the work we've done in the state of Odisha, we've been invited by the government to form what they call a data policy and institutes innovation centers, a bunch of words. But what it is the Odisha government proactively saying, come work with us with all the data we've got to figure out what are the right questions to ask, and then we'll think about how we answer them. That's, of course, Odisha government has been, in spite of being economically not so strong, has been incredibly proactive in many other things that it does. And I think those things don't happen instantaneously. They are the result of years of work, of working with that entity. to get something like this to happen, but I think is a very satisfying beginning, if nothing else. I'd say, speaking about institutional presence, Michael spoke a little bit about Epic India. What I have noticed since I've come back to India is that there's amazing research happening all over India, both in the economic space and the policy space, etc. But a lot of the noise and the projection in the press and general literature is often from think tanks who are not actually at universities, which is not super strongly evidence-based. And so I've been speaking to a bunch of institutions about thinking about, we do need in India a genuinely domestic institutional, or not one, many organizations or institutions that are dealing with the issues around broadly, climate change, sustainability, energy and environment, etc. And I work at Ahmedabad University as part of the things that I do, and we are probably going to announce later in the summer, we are setting up a climate institute at Ahmedabad University. It's meant to think deeply about what is it to be a multidisciplinary institution that thinks about education, research, and a way of impacting people both through. Education means so many different things. It could mean educating at grassroots to students doing internships at villages, making things happen, or it could be executive education for people in government and in corporations, or it could be degree programs. So we're thinking very seriously about this, and we're working obviously closely with my other Epic hat and with Anant at Warwick, etc. So we're very excited about this both as a way of actually, I think something that Robin said yesterday, there are so many young people who are wanting to engage, and what are the avenues, what are the serious avenues by which they can engage? I hope that an institutional receiving part for them in India would be a useful way for young people to, whether it's degrees or whether it's doing projects, a constructive way to engage.
Can I just join in here and add to what Bala is saying? And he and I have been working on this quite a bit, but I think one thing is to find a way to, I'm not an expert on the Indian educational system, but there's a traditional emphasis on engineering. And I think the engineering approach to some of these social problems isn't always the right frame. That it can lead to, let's install the smart meters, or let's install SOM's energy efficiency machines, whatever those were, I didn't quite get. And in a kind of very mechanical way. Did I get that right, Som? They're energy efficiency machines in a box or something. And I think one thing that Bala and I hope to do is help to launch kind of a approach to thinking about in the domain of climate and energy, the problem with a kind of more holistic and more using economics and more thinking of trade-offs way that, it's not that can't be gotten in India, but I think it's especially important as we all kind of confront this global energy challenge. So I just want to add that. Maybe, Bala, you wanted to pick up on any of that.
Yeah, I'm sorry to make this a fireside chat with me and Michael, but it is true. And Michael,
fireside over the internet.
Over the internet, of course, it's the best firesides out there. The UK has got its own education system. The US, the so-called liberal education allows you to spend a couple of years studying a few different things before deciding what to do. And in India, all our traditional universities, you do declare what you do in the beginning, but there are a set of, newly born, more liberal universities that have their own pluses and minuses, but that are, one of the pluses have the ability for people to take many classes. And so we do think, Michael and I think about this from a Chicago perspective. What is that general serious climate curriculum that you should have, which before you decide what you want to do in college, before you decide whether you want to be an engineer or a policy guy or an economist, what do you need to find out before you decide where your interest is? And I think that's an interesting question that people have to answer as education becomes more serious in this area as an area of specialization. B, it's not something that somebody in the US or somebody in the UK can even think about without seriously thinking about India and China and what they have to say about that. So in some sense, there's a mutual feedback mechanism. If there is a concept of climate education happening in India, that's super important to somebody in Chicago thinking about what's climate education. And by means of this network, and obviously Michael and I are from the same origins, or from Chicago origins, so it's easy to work on this together in Ahmedabad. But we're also working on it together between us and Tsinghua, and eventually between Tsinghua and Ahmedabad, and create a really rich curriculum of that's not even just ideas, but also involves the people from I mean, they have my utopian vision is like they have these global programs for MBAs, where people go all over the world and study what it means to be an MBA, which, don't ask me, but that's what they do. It'd be actually much more useful if they went all over the world and studied what it means to understand what climate change is and what can do economically, what technological solutions are that can work in India, because you can talk about like expensive things, but no one's going to make them in India. So at Ahmedabad University, for instance, we have somebody who who spends all his time on drone-mounted, low-cost air quality sensors. And the city of Ahmedabad, as stationary sensors, has only a handful. And so when you get information, you get it from like 4 places in Ahmedabad. Whereas this drone went around and did this right, you could actually get the meaning of air quality in Ahmedabad correctly. I feel like that work is super important, or will be super important in Africa as it begins to understand what's possible for them to do, etc. So I think there's a really exciting educational thing that we're all working on. We are working on, my colleague Meenal and I, Meenal's from Ahmedabad University as well, are working on it as well. And it's going to be super exciting over the next year or two.